like to say thanks a lot for inviting me to participate with you today evening. Before going into the nitty-gritty, we are in troubled times, and therefore, possibly each one of us is stressed out. I was listening to the conversation before the start of this meeting, and what I could make out is all of us, including myself, are equally tense about what's going to happen. And this is where I start. I also notice there are a large number of my senior doctor colleagues in this very forum. My regards to most of them. I know most of them rather. It may not be very something new for them, but I think to get the story complete, I'll start where it began. The journey of Corona, good or bad, started somewhere in December 19, when the first of the cases were picked up in Wuhan, China. The medical world knew very little about this virus. Whatever we knew was from the past experience of handling another, or rather, the other avian viruses, the influenza being the closest. We extrapolated that knowledge and continued in our journey while the virus devastated country after country. We also tried to learn what was 100 years ago, the so-called Spanish flu from 1919 to 1922-23, almost lasting 3 to 4 years. That's when we learned these virus pandemics come in waves. What happened was the knowledge and some of it, and for my non-medical colleagues in this forum, will understand why are the doctors changing stance. We say something today and 4 months down the line, we say, no, it has changed. Various reasons, and I want to clarify the same. To begin with, how does the virus spread? That's the first thing. We said the virus spreads by droplets. Therefore, the aerosol, when I talk, when I cough, when I sneeze, the droplets go into the air. A person 3 feet away from me can get the infection. In the early part of the pandemic, we also said these droplets then settle down on the surfaces, particularly the screen surfaces, laptops, mobiles, doorknobs, tables, etc. And anybody touches them and then touches his face, eyes, nose, mouth, gets the infection. From this emanated the 3 precautions: wear a mask, keep social distancing, and also hand washing repeatedly, either by alcohol or soap. But the most recent study, say about 2 months back, comes in that this virus spreads mainly by aerial spread. In other words, when I talk, cough, or sneeze, we infect the others. By the hand touch, the infection is much less. That's a change. Number 2 was testing. In the first wave, at the beginning of this pandemic, at least in India, we had just about 1 or 2 labs which could do the so-called RT-PCR test. As the pandemic grew, there are more than 2,000 plus laboratories which are recognized to do the RT-PCR test. It is a sophisticated test. It requires costly equipment. It requires trained manpower. But India was able to do it. The kits were produced. We said initially, the RT-PCR test picks up almost 90% of the people who are infected. In other words, if I do 100 positive tests, the RT-PCR will pick up 90 and will miss just 10, which was an acceptable number. In the second wave, we are also learning that this positivity has already fallen to 75%. In other words, if there are 100 people tested by RT-PCR today, only 75% will pick up positive. How does it affect us? It means that in the first round of tests, you may miss 25 out of 100. And these people who are having fever, cough, etc., need to be retested and to be treated as corona positive cases. Isolation, and possibly if the pneumonia is severe, even start the treatment. The country has now come up, this was day before yesterday's guideline, Do not reject cases who are not RT-PCR positive. If the symptoms are strong, please test them. In the same breath, I would like to tell you about the other two tests. When the country was facing the problem last year of shortage of tests, we came up with what's called a RAT test, rapid antigen test. This test, at best, is only 50% positive. The positivity may have gone down even further. So therefore, you're likely to miss large number of cases. But when in August last year, when the first wave was at its peak, our backs against the wall, this was introduced as a screening and helping mechanism to find out who is positive, who's not. Today, it is not much useful because it's going to miss half or even more than half the cases. The third of the tests you people keep hearing about is the TrueNat test, which is almost equivalent. It is actually equivalent to the RT-PCR tests. The machines were available with the various tuberculosis centers of the country and were quickly utilized by the government. It gives a point of care test means, and we are using in TMH emergency only TrueNat now. So anybody coming with a suspect, we do a TrueNat, try to get the result between 3 to 4 hours and decide which way the patient has to go, COVID or non-COVID segment. Some of you may have also heard about the so-called antibody test. It is at best a research tool or a mass screening procedure. We have never reached that level. It's not that we don't have it. At least here in Jamshedpur, TMH, we have done more than 20,000 antibody tests. But this alone is neither a guide of your protection nor an evidence that you have enough protection. So lesser spoken about the antibody tests, the better. We go to the treatments. In the beginning, they said hydroxychloroquine useful. Now it's disappeared. Similarly, a lot of medicines came into the circulation and went out. To keep the things simple today, in the early stages, with whatever evidence we have, the use of ivermectin with doxycycline or azithromycin is good enough for mild cases in the initial phase. However, with persistent fever, with shortness of breath, it is time to start antiviral therapy and also to do certain investigations like an X-ray chest. There is no need to do CT scan or HRCT as it's popularly known in all cases who test corona positive. There is a timing, there is a need for doing HRCT. Therefore, what are the things? We have a treatment protocol, and this is where the second wave, I'm now moving into the second wave, has taught us. The second wave has come from the learnings of the first wave. That means the medical management. The first week is the week of the virus. The second week is the week of immunity. In the first week, the virus starts multiplying, and this is where we have to keep a close eye, how fast and how it is damaging the body. If by the 5th or 6th day, your persistent high fever, shortness of breath, it is time to do your testing for the markers of cytokine storm, and also to do the imaging for X-ray chest, if required, HRCT. After the 7th day, if the breathing is bad, we go on to decreasing the immunity of the patient by giving steroids and further up drugs like tocilizumab or itolizumab. But steroids or tocilizumab given earlier can do tremendous harm to the human and should not be used upfront as the first line of management. Like to finish here with remdesivir, which has been so-called being purported as one of the magic bullets. Yes, it is useful to an extent. All of you are well aware of the recovery trial. But let me say one thing. It does help in decreasing the multiplication of the virus. Today, it is indicated in moderate to severe cases, should be given on time. Therefore, it gives the benefit within the 4th, 5th day up to the 7th to 9th day when the virus is multiplying maximum. After 10 days, the utility of remdesivir literally goes away. For that matter, all antiviral goes away. By the time the damage has been done to the lungs, now the treatment is how to keep the breathing going and to get the recovery of the lung going. This was regards the treatment protocol, and later part, President Jinnah has agreed, once I finish this monologue, I'll be more open to question answers I would like to clarify that further. Every individual need not be admitted. About a year back, I had given similar lectures in other forum. The percentages still remain the same. 80% of the people who develop corona positive will go through without much of medication by home isolation and treatment. About 15% of them will have a little bit of a problem when they will require some hospitalization, and with proper and timely treatment, they will also recover. It is the remaining 5% where the battle will be fought, where the various injectable drugs, support from various oxygenation mechanisms, and finally remdesivir and tocilizumab will come into play. Even at the largest number, 1 out of every 100 is seen to be a mortality. So you will ask me, my topic was wave 2. So how is wave 2 different from wave 1? Wave 2 is possibly due to a slightly different virus, coronavirus, than we had in the first wave. You've been reading, listening to the digital media about the UK strain, South Africa strain, etc. We as doctors know that any virus, once it jumps from one body to another, multiplies, and that's when the mutations takes place. When the virus starts replicating, some segments of its RNA change in numbers, the proteins change, which gives us the virus some extra qualities. Some are for the good of the humans, some are for the worse. It is out of those thousands of mutations that has taken place over the last 1 year, some of them have turned bad. And what I am talking about is the Indian mutation. This virus, like the UK mutation, is more infectious. It jumps from one to another much faster than the original virus. If you remember now, a year back, we told everybody, if you are infected, stay at home, isolate yourself, don't mix with your people. Today, and what we are seeing from our experience, anybody getting infected literally infects everybody at home. In fact, the whole family turns positive, and that's a big challenge today. The whole family is infected, which was not there in the first wave. Number two, is the virus more deadly than the previous? Difficult to say, but yes, from our experience and from the experience of what we are seeing across the cities in India, it seems to be more deadly. In the first wave, extrapolating from the TMH knowledge, you all remember we had set up almost 1100 odd beds, but the actual hard treatment beds were about 277. The rest were for people to be looked after and taken care even in hotels, hostels, etc. This time, we are having hardcore 450 beds. Even as I talk to you now, not a single bed available, and most of these people are on oxygen. When I say oxygen, not 5 to 6 liters, they are at 10, 12, 15 liters just to maintain the magical number of 90% saturation. So this is the difference in the severity of infection, which we saw in August, September last year at its peak, and what we are seeing in whole of April and May first 10 days. So this virus is more deadly, and why it has changed? Instead of going scientific, there have been certain changes in its spike protein mainly, which prevents the body from identifying, and therefore certain characteristics are changing. Ventilators, oxygenation therapies, you're all reading about. Yes, when a person is low on oxygenation, as far as we medicals are concerned, 90 is the magical number. Even in our normal practice, SpO2 falls below 90, we start thinking what is wrong and start thinking of various modalities to give oxygen, either by mask, either by a bag, or keep going upwards into non-invasive ventilators, etc. And invasive ventilators come in when all other modalities fail. Invasive ventilator, when I say, means putting a tube into somebody's lung passage and then giving pure oxygen under pressure to oxygenate the body. This time, we are seeing more and more people reaching that level. You'll be surprised, prior to the pandemic, we did not have a single HFNO, high flow nasal oxygen machine. It was hardly available in India, hardly used in India except in specific circumstances. Today, it has become a household name. What is HFNO? HFNO is a machine by which you can give 50-60 liters of oxygen, pure oxygen, into the human body without actually putting a tube into the throat. And this has been found to be very useful in oxygenating the patient. But the flip side is it consumes huge amount of oxygen, and therefore most of the centers can ill afford to use it because there is a shortage of oxygen all over. You understand there is a problem, there is a good thing, but there is bad part also. Another simple thing which I want to share with you is prone ventilation or prone breathing. Anybody and all of us should practice, even now when we are healthy, of lying with our belly down and backside up, which is called the prone position, with certain pillows to help, and try to spend time that way. If God forbid the requirement comes up, we should be adjusted to that position because it definitely improves the oxygenation of the human body by at least 4 to 5 counts. It is a helpful technique and to be useful. Would like to share another thing that is developing in the second wave. With the shortage of beds, shortage of problems, what does an individual do who's positive, who has some mild X-ray findings, and whose oxygenation is hovering around 92, 93, 94, etc.? People are worried. And when they go to the hospital, there is no bed. There is a concept of coming in of using home oxygenation under the guidance of a doctor. And I was very happy when Dr. Singhal in the early part today spoke about how your club, your Rotarians have taken this initiative of guiding your people through COVID. Dr. Singhal sir, excellent initiative, and I'll request you to also guide your patients through the oxygenation. How do you oxygenate at home? There are only two ways to do it. Either have an oxygen concentrator at home or have an oxygen cylinder. If you can lay your hands on an oxygen concentrator and have it in your colony, which can be shared by various families who have trouble, it will be a very good idea. It is difficult to get, but I would suggest have it and keep it there. And whichever family in a society or block of houses has a problem, you share this asset with each other. Oxygenation, preferably by oxygen concentrator if you're buying, which has the capacity to give up to 10 liters per minute. 90% pure oxygen up to 10 liters per minute will be very helpful. Why? It is not the final answer. It gives you the bridge to moving to the hospital bed. It gives you a time for the individual to sustain for 24, 48 hours while a bed is being arranged anywhere in the city. Getting a cylinder at home is more troublesome. Yes, if nothing is available, I would not say no to it. An average B-type cylinder, when you use oxygen at 10 liters per minute, doesn't last you more than 4 to 5 hours. So do you have wherewithal to keep changing your cylinder 4 times a day in these times? Very difficult. But oxygen concentrator, very useful. So please think about it. As Rotarians, whatever good work you are doing, keep this in your mind. Lastly, how will this pandemic end? The world has done everything possible. There are soothsayers, there are naysayers, there are yes-sayers. Let's forget about all of them. The answer to ending this pandemic is vaccines. You're all aware, the first of the two vaccines that came, the Pfizer and Moderna, they are good vaccines, 90% effectivity, but they have a cold chain problem of storage at -70 to -80 degrees. India, at least India, does not have this wherewithal even today. The Western world, particularly the European countries and the US, have utilized it to a great extent. Even they found a challenge. Then came the vaccines, which are stored at 2 to 8 degrees. When I say 2 to 8 degrees, this is the temperature which is there in all our domestic fridges if you keep anything in the door panel. That is 2 to 8. Most of the places in India have this facility available because of our regular vaccination program. Luckily for us, the two vaccines that came up in India, the Covishield produced by Serum Institute and Covaxin by Bharat Biotech, are both 2 to 8 degrees vaccine. We started our vaccination program in a very good manner. We were moving in a great speed, covering a large number of people, but then came the roadblock. The production, for whatever reason, has gone down. And even now, we are struggling to get the vaccines. I think it's another 10, 15, 20 days when we will overcome. Regardless of that, please take your vaccine whenever you are due. Please take your 2 doses. Don't say no. I have people in my own hospital who would have got as medical health workers, but for whatever reason they did not. And today they come to me, sir, why can't we get the vaccine now? They're facing the problem. So for the society, I would say, whenever your turn comes, please go ahead and take your vaccination. I'll tell you why I'm talking so much about vaccinations. From the general public side, they say, what good does the vaccine do? I can still get an infection. I can still pass on the infection. Even after vaccination, I have to wear a mask. I can't go into the crowded places. So what good does it do? Yes, absolutely right. How will the pandemic end? Pandemic will end when the transmission from one person to another stops. When the transmission, even if it takes place, has a lesser percentage. If we continue with this cycle, the mutations come to a stop. As the jumping from one human to another come to a lower level, the mutations also come to a lower level, and the virus will reach a level in the society where it cannot become more dangerous. Number two, the present data clearly says that even if you're vaccinated by a single dose and you have not reached 2 doses, then also you are well protected. And in our own study and the study in many, many places, we are seeing that severe infection is rarely seen in people who have had both doses and have cleared the 14 days mark. There have been an occasional death. Even in TMH, there has been one death of an elderly doctor colleague of ours, 70 years plus, who had other diseases. Well, unfortunate, yes, we agree, everything was tried, but then it is much less compared to the others. So last message is continue to go for vaccination, and that probably will end. President Jinnah sir, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to your Rotarians. If you permit, I'm ready to answer any questions and doubts. Thank you.
Quite informative, sir, but very frightening. Uh, I think whatever you have spoken will go a long way in ensuring that all of us follow whatever you have said. Now I request our members to kindly ask their questions.
Hi, good evening, doctor. I'm Chandrasekhar. We must have met each other number of times in road, both on the golf course and in the hospital. I have only one question to ask, doc. It is as a preventive measure, those who have already had vaccination of 2 doses, just to build up the immunity. Will the steam inhaling regularly will help us in maintaining our health, or it is not of much use? And number two is that Indian methods of pranayam, etc., which builds up the lungs capacity. Will these two measures help us to prevent attack of the coronavirus?
Sir, thank you, sir. It reminds me of the good days, and I hope they come back when we meet on the golf course.
Yeah, that's right.
As far as steam inhalation is concerned, sir, it is not an immunity booster. It is not meant to kill the virus. We as doctors know very well, steam inhalation and gargles are used and have been used from time immemorial by us to provide comfort to the throat and clear our sinuses and the upper respiratory passage. That's all it does. It's not an immunity building.
Okay.
But if you feel comfortable by doing the steam inhalation, please go ahead, but don't burn your lining of the nose, throat, and the upper respiratory tract by repeatedly using very hot temperature steam for that purpose. Your second question, probably doing pranayam, yoga, definitely helpful. It builds up your general health and no harm in doing it and continuing to do it if your health permits.
Thank you very much.
Sir, this is ML Agarwal, head fungus. You have been hearing on TV. What is that and how to prevent ourselves from that?
Sir, if I heard your question, good evening to you. And if I heard your question right, you're talking of black fungus, mucormycosis.
Correct,
Yes.
sir.
There has been so much extensive use of steroids in treating the corona patients that it has brought down the immunity of a level where a normal fungus, which should not ideally grow into, it's a nasal fungus mainly, and it has started taking, and it is a dangerous fungus to have. I fully agree with you, and that is why steroids have to be used with caution. Please don't start steroids on your own because a tablet available off the counter. It should be used under doctor's guidance at the right time. In the early part of my talk, I did say it is useful only when started around 5th, 6th day if the cytokine markers like CRP, LDH, ferritin, etc. are on the higher side. Please do not start steroids on your own. You pull down your immunity and actually encourage the virus to grow. What you're doing is you're doing harm to yourself. You pull down your immunity and you allow the virus to jump and grow in a bigger number.
So
Good
I
evening,
have a
Doc. I am
question.
Mr. Kotwal speaking. I have a question, Doctor. For Tata employees, it is free COVID treatment, but what about our non-employees? What is it? How much do we have to pay?
A very pertinent question, sir. From 1st December, we changed over to the paid model. We are following the government guidelines of payment in an NABH hospital, which we are. The three major, just remember, you should not be charged more than 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 per day, depending on the type of bed you are in. The rest of it, if the treatment goes higher, we take the brunt.
Sir, can I
Thank you.
ask a
Thank you,
question? This is
Doc.
Vijay Mehta. Sir, can I ask a question?
Sure, sir.
There is a dilemma which I would like a little clarification. These days, there are a lot of asymptomatic patients who are tested positive, but their oxygen level, their normal health issues are not there. They're just perfectly healthy, but they have been tested positive. We are also told that if you don't have the symptoms, you don't need to go for a COVID test. Now, in this condition, do we take medicines which are required to be taken, like doxycycline and a couple of other things which are recommended to people who have mild infection of this by being at home? How do we decide that if we don't get ourselves tested because you are not having any other signs of being affected?
Thank you, Mehta, sir. Very nice seeing you on screen. And it's a very pertinent question, and I would like to answer it in a little longish way. You get tested for something else, like a traveler coming into Jharkhand or Jamshedpur, you get tested and suddenly you had no symptoms, you are positive. And in my talk also, I said 80% of the people will probably sail through like that. Only thing you have to do for the protection of the society and for your family is to isolate yourself in the home. The only thing recommended is take vitamin C and zinc and monitor your temperature and oxygenation. No other medicine. However, if you are developing severe symptoms of cough, of high fever, it's about time to start doxycycline and ivermectin and continue to monitor your oxygenation and temperature. By the 5th, 6th day, if the temperature is high, 101, 102 continuously, it is about time to get your markers and your X-ray imaging. How do you, average person in Jamshedpur, get in touch? Yes, that's a big challenge. From TMH, in the second wave, we have started 2 sites, or rather telephone consultation, which any one of you, even if you're not a Tata Steel employee, can book your thing and have a verbal communication with the doctor. The utilization of these 2, there are doctors sitting during the working hours, almost 8 hours a day, 2 places. You can consult them on phone from your home and they will advise you, and you can then you will get a prescription if you have registered online, and possibly you can get the medicine collected from any of the pharmacists. This will help you in not moving out of the house. Therefore, it helps you plus prevents society from getting infected if you have to move around. And we are able to provide you guidance for your treatment. We have also reactivated the post-COVID clinic. People who are recovering after 10th day can either walk into the clinic and discuss their post-COVID symptoms, etc., like tightness of chest, persistent cough, or any other features. Thirdly, you mentioned about testing. Yes, the latest guideline says that if you are an asymptomatic in home isolation and you have had no other fever, no fever at all for the last 3 days, after 10 days, you do not require a test. You do not require a test because it is not that whether it will be positive or negative. More important is the virus that you were infected is no more infective to the others. It does not have the capability to infect others. It does not have the capability to multiply. And that is the philosophy on which this national guideline has been issued.
So if we haven't got ourselves tested, like you just mentioned, if you're traveling and you get a mandatory test done, you have mentioned that we must isolate ourselves in the house. Now, without having any symptoms, but yet being positive, you could be positive or symptomatic. How do we isolate ourselves? That means we just act normal life if there are no symptoms.
Well, there are two things, sir. One, there are two things. Mr. Mehta,
Yes,
if you
sir.
are, say, an example, you are a traveler, you're coming from, say, Bhubaneswar, Delhi, anything,
That is understandable.
the requirement is to be tested.
That's
If
right.
you
But
test positive, fine. If you don't test positive, then you are good. That's one. Two is you can be an asymptomatic positive who has never been tested.
that's right.
So nobody knows. So nobody knows. It is
Yes.
one of those things you just carry on. What I get a lot of people, and in this changing weather, a lot of us get this mild cough like thing. You know, we keep doing
Yes.
this, or we get a mild fever, 99.2, etc., or a headache or a body ache. People are scared. I keep getting these queries on my phone from a lot of my friends and colleagues all over. And my answer is very simple. If you're feeling unwell, isolate, wait for 3 days. If it subsides, well and good. If it doesn't, go for a test.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So,
Anybody else? Yes. Dr.
Yes,
Bharat?
I have a question. I have a question of
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah, yeah.
Chaudhary.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Dr. Chaudhary, thank you for a very informative session. I wanted to understand, because there are various opinions as to the duration one should wait from the, I mean, having taken a vaccine first shot and then testing positive, what is the duration one should wait to get the second shot?
yes, ma'am, very interesting question because a lot of people are stuck in that. You take your first vaccine and then you test positive and you recover. 10, 12, 13 days you recover. Normally it is 4 weeks after you test negative. And now since we are not testing after 10 days if you have been asymptomatic, 4 weeks after that 10-day mark.
Thank you very much.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
My name is Mehra, Surinder Mehra. I have a question slightly beyond the medicine and treatment. I find that the situation is very scary and very depressing. Particularly the quietness around you is more depressing. Now, I have been told that positivity, how to bring it, I do not know, is one of the very important factors in fighting this disease. Now, would you make any comment from this? And also, how to remain positive?
Sir, I think you couldn't have asked a better question than this, sir. And in the beginning of the talk, I did say that we are going through troubled times. We don't know who will be the next guy who will get infected, how bad the disease will be, etc. There is fear in the society, not only in Jamshedpur, in whole of this country and across the world. People are scared. We need to remain positive, at least try to be positive by not encouraging negative news to be spread. We are trying our best to have the positive aspects. And if the President Jinnah permits, I will share a short video I got recently.
Yeah, please go ahead,
On
sir.
positivity. Small thing, I would request all the Rotarians attending this meeting to have a look at it. You know, everything can be said it's a glass is half full or half empty business. Let's not spread negativity. Let's stay positive and let's fight Corona together. So very pertinent. And in my own personal, although no scientific reason, I can tell you, I've been a surgeon all my life, laparoscopic surgeon in my life. I've seen patients who came to me with a positive. I was doing a lot of these gallbladder surgeries earlier. A lot of young women came and, they were bindas. Doctor, when can I join work? That was their thing. And they went home next day and 2 days down the line, doc, I want to attend my office. I'm okay. I said, please do. On the other hand, I had women who asked me 150 questions. How many surgeries have you done? How many have died in your hands? And everything negative about, how does your hospital has this? Does your hospital has that? These are the patients, I don't know for what reason, landed up in problems. Very difficult, not scientific. So that's what answers positivity.
Thank you.
Dr. Chaudhary, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. My name is Ram Murthy. At the very outset, I would like to start with a note of gratitude, of acknowledgement of the treatment me and my wife received in the hands of the wonderful team of doctors at GMH. We were COVID positive. We were there in the hospital for a period of 12 days, and we came out negative at the end of the treatment. I definitely wish to express my sincerest gratitude to the team of doctors and the administrators who gave us a wonderful course of treatment. As far as my question is concerned, I came across a coverage of your interview in the Hindi newspapers where it was said that the second wave basically is different from the first wave because now the virus is in the air. Is masking, social distancing, and hand sanitizing adequate to meet this kind of a transformation in the second phase, where we would be able to protect ourselves against the attack of virus by simply managing to wear masks as when we step out of the house and sanitize and keep social distance? Would it be adequate?
So, I can tell you with confidence that other than the vaccine, these three things are the only ones that are protecting us. And I'll give you the scientific reason behind it. First, I'll tell you there are three types of masks generally available in the market. One are the double layer cloth masks. The other is the triple layer, triple layer surgical masks, and the N95 mask.
N95.
N95 mask is the one that is to be used in medical settings. Cloth masks are to be used. It's a double layer, preferably a cotton mask, when you are at home driving or even say walking on the road, etc. Triple layer mask if you are visiting the hospital. There is some coverage about using double the mask to protect yourself. Well, if you are wearing N95, there is no reason to use double mask at all. In fact, it negates the advantages of N95 mask. Meanwhile, if you feel so apprehensive, use a triple layer surgical mask and over that wear a cotton mask or the cloth mask. The advantage is the cloth mask can easily be washed, pressed and reused, and the surgical mask can be disposed.
Be thrown out. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, how does the mask help? If I'm wearing a mask and I'm infected, I do not come, if somebody comes to my office or somebody I meet in public, my direct spray from my mouth does not move into the free air. It is filtered by the mask. If the person with whom I'm communicating is infective and he's not wearing a mask, at least I'm protected to a certain extent. If both of us are wearing the correct mask and maintaining the distance of 3 feet minimum, we are more or less protected. There is no point in wearing a mask on your chin or constantly touching the surface of the mask. This is very important. And if you notice, most of the people that we interact with are actually touching their mask. Even in a conversation of 10 minutes, 4 or 5 times they will touch the mask. Please handle your mask only by the loops and not by the surface.
The fundamental question I continue to have in my mind in terms of a doubt, the phase 1 being different than phase 2, with phase 2 on, where the virus is ever prevalent in the atmosphere, is masking an adequate protection?
Sir, I'll again try to say the virus does not indefinitely stay in the environment. It does not stay infinite. So it dies its own death. The virus also has a difficulty in surviving in the natural surrounding. It is not that it can survive. Patients coming to hospital, doctors, nurses, paramedics, people coming to the hospital, we are in a contagion area. You wear your mask correctly, you take the precautions, it's nothing. Otherwise, my people who are working in the COVID positive wards, after all, what are they wearing? They're wearing the N95 mask. They're moving in the air that is probably full of the virus. People are coughing, talking, etc. No, but if you wear your mask correctly, you don't breach the protocol, you're unlikely to be infected. If you are referring to spraying around of rooms and all, it is not much recommended.
Is it necessary to wear a mask under the current conditions inside the home also?
Yes, in certain areas where high-risk patients are there, a lot of families we are advising, please wear a mask even at home. And if possible, avoid dinner or a lunch where 4 or 5 family members actually. Keep your timing separate. Try to separate yourself. So even if one person is accidentally bringing the infection to the house, the others are protected while the virus dies its own death.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Chaudhary, may I ask a question?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Shamita Ahuja. My question is associated with what you just said about not having meals together if possible. And suppose I am not keeping too well, I haven't tested positive. We are always talking about keeping oneself in isolation. That entire concept of isolation is a little hazy because within the household, there are certain common activities or common areas of overlap, like using the washroom, for instance, or how far can we isolate? What is the best protocol to be followed regarding isolation?
Yeah, ma'am, I think it's a very good question because all of us are living in different varieties of accommodations. Somebody have a bigger house, somebody have a smaller house, somebody have a larger family, somebody has a smaller family. And we all must learn to adjust in these settings as per the prevailing conditions of individual houses. When we talk of isolation, one, if you have a separate room for yourself and the slightest suspicion of a slight fever, body ache, or a cough, move into that room. If it has a separate washroom, very good. If it doesn't, I will answer that. And don't mix with rest of the people. Start wearing the mask. Your meal should come into your room and should be pushed out. The clothes, that means the bed sheets, pillow covers, they are also infected, should not go out with the general laundry. Should not go out. So if you follow this, you are protecting your near and dear ones, especially if you have elderly people at home who need to be protected more. If you have even a smaller house, then at least don't have meals with them. Don't have the evening television session with, normally a family sits together and watches the various movies and things. Yes, avoid that. If you're sharing a washroom, when you are using the washroom, make sure that all the handles, etc., are cleaned with whatever disinfectant you have, and clear out the washroom of any towels that you have used. Take it back to your room. If you don't even have a single room, then let the family members not come and sit on your bed, talk to you, looking after your welfare. These are some of the suggestions I can give. I know it is difficult, and that is why it is a gray area, but your question is very pertinent.
Thank you so much, doctor. That's of immense help. How does it impact infants? If there is a small baby in the house, how best can the baby be protected because the baby cannot be wearing a mask?
Ma'am, your question has raised a part of the discussion I had purposely kept out. My topic today was second wave and beyond. I take this opportunity, President Jinnah permits, another 5 minutes on what is beyond. We are anticipating the third wave. We are anticipating that a larger number of younger people will get infected. We are anticipating that people below 12 years will get infected. And that's the scary. The preparations have started. I know whatever we do now will run off or finish with this second wave. Just to share with you, and this is my thought process, we are probably hitting the peak even as we talk today. In the next 3-4 days, the numbers will start coming. At what speed they come down is difficult to say, but numbers will start. And probably by middle of June, the numbers would have reached manageable level. So the augmentation of oxygenation, augmentation of beds, augmentation of ventilators, augmentation, all this will continue, and we are preparing for third wave. One of the things in the third wave is the children. We need to create more facilities for oxygenation, for ventilators, separate wards for children below 15 or 12 years who will have to be handled in a different way. We have to create the infrastructure. We have approximately 5 to 6 months to prepare. I cannot predict you the 100% when the third wave will hit us, but let us not get into that ostrich approach. Oh, we are very good. What mistake we made in the after the first wave? December, January, February, we were behaving as if there is no corona. And neither the infrastructure was prepared, nor the general population was prepared. That mistake should not be repeated. Children will be infected, children will have problems, and therefore we need to get that act in mind.
Sir, one last question. We are planning a mobile oxygenation unit, mobile. What are the precautions we need to take?
So the point is, how do you deliver the oxygen? As I said, there are 3 modalities. There's a very good thought process that the Rotarians are planning to have an oxygen generation plant set up, either by PSA technique. It will help us in saving the liquid oxygen. This plant is in 2 varieties. From what I can understand from your talk, that you will be setting up a plant in a fixed place, don't have it mobile, and the cylinders come to that place, are filled up, and then can be stored in a bank and given to needy people for their home oxygenation, or smaller hospitals and nursing. Oxygen can be delivered. That is one. If you are thinking of an oxygen generation plant mobile, it is difficult to handle house to house. So if you take my suggestion, sir, set up a requisite oxygen generation plant, which has a capacity to fill in cylinders. Buy cylinders, either B type or D type. See, I'll tell you why I'm saying, I don't want to confuse you. A D type cylinders has a 7,000 plus liter capacity. A B type has about 3,000 odd liter capacity, or even slightly less than. And based on that, whatever cylinder you can get hold, your oxygen generation unit fills it up to an X amount of pressure, and it is kept as a bank. Now, in say colony number A, household says, Mr. Jaina, we want oxygen, can you help us? He says, no problem. House number, you have a delivery boy, cylinder is delivered for whatever way, either free or cost, that can be worked. It will be a good idea as we move forward towards the third wave.
So we were just thinking, suppose we have a mobile van and we have a concentrator in that and some oxygen cylinders. You think it's a good idea?
Why have a mobile van, sir? Develop a depot, a single room or a 2-room, where you have oxygen concentrators and filled cylinders kept ready. You have a manager for that, and anybody in town needing an oxygen concentrator rings up, and as per the thing, you have a delivery boy who delivers the oxygen concentrator at his place in a tempo, and you keep a record. Once he's used this oxygen concentrator, it comes back clean and kept ready for the next person. Similarly for cylinders, but make sure that you have a capacity to refill these cylinders. That's all.
Okay.
Another problem with oxygen cylinders is there is a regulator, which is a very fragile item. It keeps breaking. Today in Jamshedpur, in fact, whole of Jharkhand, oxygen regulators are not available. So even if you have a cylinder, you can't give the oxygen.
Yeah, President Jaina, this is Dr.
Yeah.
Bharat.
Yeah, Dr.
Hi, Dr. Rajan Chaudhary. It was let me thank you for a brilliant presentation. It was one of the best we have heard, in the last few months. Now, the question is, talking of the third wave, now, how should we even think or plan to prevent the third wave, if it is possible? And what can Rotary do, maybe by generating awareness or sort of, boosting immunity, whatever needs to be? Can we prevent the third wave?
Good evening. It is good to see you on the screen. And I saw
Hi,
Madam
sir.
Vijaya also.
Yeah, Vijay.
We miss our Jubilee Park days, Madam,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
where we were meeting every morning.
yeah, yeah.
And good to see you in good health.
We are missing that.
Sir. Very good, sir. So you have a very, sir, knowing you as Dr. Bharat, I know you'll come up with, you already know the answer. The
Yeah.
answer is Rotarians can do is to form a forum where you can vaccinate the society.
Yeah.
PMH, Tata Motors, MGM, all of us will try, but we will run short. Think about you register yourself as a vaccinating agency in one of the huge marriage halls, air-conditioned halls, get a certification, buy the vaccine. Now you're supposed to buy straight off the OEM, whether Serum Institute, Biotech, Sputnik is coming in from Dr. Reddy's in a very big way. And another one, that Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the single dose vaccine, should also be moving in another 2 to 3 months. Having told you that, sir, I think Rotarians can do a great job by helping in vaccination, and that is what will help in preventing the third wave or bringing down the intensity of the third wave. In whatever way you can, sir, please do it.
I know. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thank you very much.